Halo 3 LASO. Brutal, unforgiving, and in 2007, barely anyone had even tried it, except for a few maniacs on the Bungie forums, and I was one of them. Back in 2007, around the time Halo 3 launched, I spent a lot of time on the Bungie.net forums. One day, I stumbled across a thread talking about something called Mythic Difficulty, which we now know as LASO. For anyone unfamiliar, LASO stands for Legendary All Skulls On, basically the hardest way to play Halo. It instantly caught my attention. Looking back, I must have been a bit of a psycho 13 or 14-year-old to think this was a good idea, but I was hooked. I've always had this drive to push myself, to see how far I could go with a challenge, and Mythic felt like the ultimate test. Now just a heads up, this video is mostly my personal history of LASO, not a detailed overview of what LASO actually is. Back then, I think only one full Mythic run had been completed, by a guy called Parhat Pojat. I started posting in the forums a little, and within a few days, I managed to beat Floodgate and Halo, the easy entry levels. Feeling confident, I moved on to Savo Highway in the Storm. Savo was a breeze, but the Storm was a different story. It wasn't brutal, but I definitely hit some roadblocks. I found myself asking for help on the forums, which fell on deaf ears. I was on my own. It wasn't exactly a guidebook. At the time, maybe 2 or 3 people on the entire planet had cleared that level on LASO, so I kept grinding until it finally clicked. After that, the community pointed me towards Cortana. I remember being in school, zoning out in class, visualising the route through the nightmare of a level. I even drew it out on paper, completely ignoring what was being taught at the time. I had a couple heartbreaking attempts, especially dying in the final room of the Arbiter and his flamethrower, just meters from the end. But after a few weeks of trying, I finally beat it. And man, it was absolutely brutal. Moving on to Sierra 117 and Crow's Nest. I honestly don't remember much about the grind. I'm sure at the time they were difficult, but nothing about them stands out to me. I knocked them both out, and then it was time to face the 2 titans, the Ark and the Covenant. The Covenant went down easier than I expected, but the Ark, that was a whole different beast. I struggled for months on that level. The section after the Scarab was brutal. I died over and over, barely making any progress. Each run started to feel like a waste of time. At one point, a player named Vincent K shared a strategy that let you drop down to the final chieftain early. I'd only watched the video, I hadn't practiced it. In the middle of my best run ever, I got greedy, I tried the trick live. The thing was, I didn't really understand how it worked. You need to crouch in a very specific spot to trigger the death barrier to disappear. So when you drop down to the chieftain, you land safely. But when I dropped, the death barrier was still active, and I fell straight to my death. It was such a brutal, avoidable mistake. Little did I know, this one failed drop would come to haunt me later. But after that, I shut the game off, and didn't touch it for months. I was done. I don't even know why, but one night several months later, I decided to try again. I was on an Xbox Live call with a friend, live commentating my run like it was some kind of esports event, and something just clicked. I didn't beat it that time, but I was close. That run broke the mental block I had been stuck behind for so long. With the fear and doubt finally gone, I jumped back in to spend the next few days grinding, and this time I was ready. After grinding for over a year, I finally conquered Halo 3 LASO, or so I thought. I became the 5th person in the world to complete every level on the hardest difficulty. It was a massive personal milestone. After the cutscene rolled, I put the controller down. I didn't yell, I didn't smile, just stood up, walked downstairs, and I sat on the couch in complete silence, like the victory hadn't quite sunk in yet. I don't know how long I was there for. I was in shock. I'd spent over a month pushing myself to this, and now it was over, and I couldn't quite process it. LASO wasn't just a game challenge. It was a test of patience, willpower, how far I could push myself. But I wasn't done. The journey has only just begun. After finally beating it, my mindset started to shift. I wasn't just thinking about finishing runs anymore. I was thinking about the players still struggling. You see, back then, The only resources were hour-long videos with little explanation, or random text guides, which if you actually take time to read, they aren't that good. And more often than not, they're just completely outright wrong. It wasn't an ideal learning experience. So I set a new goal, to make it easier for others. I wanted to improve my earlier runs, not just to save time, but to make them cleaner and easier to follow, more concise. I wouldn't call it speedrunning, not yet anyway, but I did go back and refine some of the easier levels. The Storm, Savo, Sierra, and Crow's Nest. I avoided the Ark and the Covenant on purpose. At the time, Parhat Pojat was the golden standard. His runs were polished, methodical, almost inhuman. But that level of perfection felt out of reach for the average player. I wanted to create something more accessible, something people could actually learn from. I wasn't trying to be perfect, I was just trying to be helpful. I didn't want others to struggle the way I had, wandering through hours of confusing footage with little explanation, feeling stuck and frustrated. My goal was to make LASO accessible, something anyone willing to try could achieve, not just as an impossible feat for the elites. I remember watching Parhat Pojat simply walk past enemies at the start of Sierra 117. No firefights, no chaos, just smooth, precise movement. That blew my mind. Up until then, every fight had felt mandatory, like part of the test. The idea you could skip enemies? That was a huge revelation. Later, I stumbled across high-speed Halo, and everything changed once again. I saw strategies I didn't even know existed. The movement, the routing, the sheer precision, it unlocked something in me. I started speedrunning Halo 3, on LASO no less. The hardest difficulty the game had to offer. I wasn't good, not at first. It took ages to set a time I was actually proud of, but it had begun. I began experimenting, tweaking strategies, testing skips, looking for any edge I could find, finding ways to push just a little bit further each time. For example, I was the first person to use this strategy on Sierra 117 under LASO conditions. At that point, no one had done it. I adapted a risky, legendary strategy, one complicated by the catch skull, which made enemies throw grenades like crazy, and the lack of the recharge under LASO rules. Pulling this off required precision and patience, and a whole lot of luck. Over time, I kept improving, slowly chipping away, getting closer and closer to Parhat Pojat's times. But honestly, he was so far ahead it was ridiculous. He had a 17-minute Crow's Nest time. Meanwhile, second place, that was me, clocked in at 40 minutes and 7 seconds. This wasn't really a rivalry, not at the time, and not on that level. Parhat was simply on a different plane, showing what was possible. My 40-minute run was my own journey, something I was proud of, even if it looked nothing like his 17-minute run. To put it another way, that difference was over an entire Simpsons episode. He wasn't just winning, he was playing in a completely different league. Anyway, moving on to the Storm, a level I really liked. At the time, it struck a perfect balance between being challenging and fun, and I always believed it could be improved. And believe it or not, in 2009, I finally did it. I beat Parhat's Storm time. I had done it. The first person in the world to pull it off. It felt unreal. Like standing on top of a mountain no one believed could be climbed, but the victory didn't last long. Just 5 days later, he took it back. Parhat wasn't someone who liked losing his records. I hated that. I went straight back to the Storm. I couldn't grind 24/7, I was still in school, but every free moment went into it. But before I could strike back, something else came up. Something that would pull me away from the grind entirely. In the summer of 2009, Bungie shook up the LASO community with 2 official challenges. The first time they truly acknowledged our grind. The prize? The insanely rare and coveted recon armor. I'd wanted that armor for years, like every kid who spent hours on Halo. The first was the Summer Mythic Recon Challenge. 9 weeks, 9 individual LASO levels. Each week, we had to complete and submit the assigned level, starting with Floodgate and ending with the Ark. Although I never snagged Recon by winning the first few weeks, I knew fewer players would finish the later levels, which would boost my chances. Then, around week 7 or 8, Bungie launched a second contest, this time a co-op challenge. We had to submit LASO runs of individual levels, but now with a partner, no carryover allowed, and the pressure was on to perform perfectly together. I teamed up with a Swedish LASO veteran, and we tackled these co-op levels alongside our solo runs. By the time week 9 rolled around, we completed both challenges. We took first place in the co-op contest, and we were among the few to finish the solo challenge. The wait for the results was brutal. Every day stretched longer as I refreshed the forums and my inbox. Then, out of nowhere, something unexpected happened. Tyrant, the figurehead of the Mythic community at the time, and someone who'd been in contact with Bungie, made a surprising announcement. Everyone who completed all 9 levels of the Summer Mythic Challenge would be awarded Recon. Because we also took first place in the co-op challenge, my teammate and I might have been the only people ever to win and receive Recon armor twice. But since we'd already earned Recon by winning the solo contest, we couldn't receive a second set. So we passed the co-op reward down to the second place team. So, the 10 of us, Parhat included, would often squad up and head into matchmaking as full teams. And let me tell you, those memories still stand out vividly to this day. Now, Recon armor usually triggered 1 or 2 reactions from the opposing team. Either they'd goof around and gush over the armor, or they'd flip into full tryhard mode, determined to beat Recon. Either way, it was always a good time. Eventually, that fun had to end, and the grind called me back. I returned to the Storm, still hungry to claim that record. That fire, it never went out. 9 months after my previous Storm record, I came back stronger than ever. I finally beat Parhat's time, setting a new record at 12:23. I felt more motivated than ever. I knew my time could still be improved. And apparently, so did Parhat. Within 24 hours, he struck back. Twice. First, he sliced my 12:23 down to an 11:18. Then, in a jaw-dropping move, he shattered the barrier entirely, dropping the time to 9:53. Breaking 10 minutes felt almost unreal. The race was on, and there was no turning back. The Storm was my main obsession, but I wasn't just one-dimensional. I wanted to sharpen my skills across the board and chip away at faster times on multiple levels. I picked off some of the easier levels: Salvo in 4:54, Floodgate in 4:16, Cortana in 10:59, and Halo in 12:42. I was building momentum on the manageable missions, but held back from fully pushing the brutal ones like the Ark. Not because I was slacking, far from it. In fact, check out my Tower 1 entrance on the Covenant from 2009, with no shields at the time. It was already a common place to die on regular legendary difficulty, let alone LASO. Halo was another level I just couldn't quit. Month after month, on and off, I battled to beat Parhat's 12:23. I finished that mission at least 50 times, each attempt inching closer, but never closing the gap. 20 seconds felt like a mile, and no matter what I tried, just couldn't cross the line. Frustrated, but undeterred, I refocused on the Storm. But I also took on a side project, Sierra 117, one of the tougher levels. It had already seen some of my time, and I believe those records were within reach. They just needed the grind. It's funny looking back. Even in my early days, I don't think I ever believed I was remarkably skilled at video games. What I had was something else entirely. Relentless persistence. I didn't know how to give up. Once I set my sights on something, I just kept going. It didn't matter how hard it was, or how long it took. I would get there eventually. I kept grinding. Days into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. After a monumental 2-year journey, I finally did it. I beat Parhat to 9:53 on the Storm, set at a 9:51. Not long after, I also snagged an 11:03 on Sierra 117. That victory was bittersweet. I'd crushed the previous record by a wide margin, but after releasing Johnson, I ended up waiting nearly 4 minutes for the Pelican to arrive. In normal speedruns, that ending usually takes about minute 20, so this unexpected delay felt like forever. A tough reminder that sometimes the game itself works against you. Also, just to clarify, I didn't spend the full 2 years grinding those levels non-stop. The journey was broken up with the releases of ODST and Reach. I dove into those games, I beat their LASO campaigns as well, and ranked in top 5 for those. I enjoyed the multiplayer, explored other titles, but no matter what I played, I always came back to the Storm when the time was right. This was the point where I thought my LASO journey had ended. But then, almost 10 years later, LASO returned to the spotlight. I guess I should point out it never truly disappeared. It just simmered under the surface, with bursts of attention here and there. Sorix shattered my Sierra 117 record. Sasquatch toppled most of Parhat's long-standing runs, some standing for nearly 15 years. And then, the Covenant and the Ark finally fell, claimed by a runner known as Larko Angel. Seeing those records fall was shocking. Some had lasted so long. But at the same time, it wasn't surprising. Parhat's skill was legendary, yet the growth of new strategies made those once impossible runs beatable. Watching the scene evolve filled me with a mix of awe and nostalgia. Then, everything shifted when Moist Critical, a popular streamer, dropped a $20,000 Halo 2 LASO contest. That was when I realised the time had come to bring Halo 3 LASO back. My knowledge from a decade earlier lingered, but much had faded. Between 2014 and 2017, I've been speedrunning Halo 3 and Legendary. The LASO was a different beast, slower, more methodical, requiring a focus and patience I hadn't tapped into for years. So I started slow, easing myself back into the grind, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I fired up Halo 3 and Legendary, starting from nothing. 10 days later, I finished my first run, routing every step on my own. There was a 6-hour run by Cutting Crew I could have leaned on, but I resisted. I wanted this to be mine, my own rediscovery, figuring out what still clicked and what needed relearning. I set a bold goal for myself, to finish under 3 hours, a personal challenge to honour the spirit of my old devastating achievements. The final time was barely over 2 hours and 10 minutes. But then, the real beast emerged. The unforgiving LASO difficulty. Level's over. No one dies on floodgates. Doesn't happen. I quickly realised that many of the standard legendary strategies didn't carry over. The difficulty demanded a completely different approach. Back in 2008-2009, my LASO individual levels focused mostly on speed, and I wasn't aiming to complete an entire game in one sitting. I could restart those runs thousands of times, refining small sections again and again. But a full, deathless LASO run was something else entirely. A challenge that required new strategies was something no one had ever done before. So I dove deep into the archives of past runners. Danza's precise route through Sierra 117, Paradoxic's innovative tactics, and I absorbed every detail I could. I was piecing together a new playbook. I knew this wasn't a solo climb anymore. This was a community quest. Around the same time, Sasquatch, a top Halo 3 runner, multi-world record holder, and leading streamer, joined the grind. We teamed up, sharing strategies and frustrations, before life pulled him away early on. I kept pushing for a few more weeks, chasing progress of every run, until real life demanded my attention, and I had to step back too. Salvo Highway was surprisingly difficult. I ran it 8 full times just to finally beat it. I routed and rerouted that level multiple times, searching for any edge I could find until I broke through. I kept trying the usual legendary death strategies, but the catch skull had other plans. That stuck me? Dude, that was... I had to go back to the drawing board and rethink my approach from scratch. It was frustrating. That grind taught me a lot about adapting and staying patient. During that grind, I found a few strategies that made a huge difference. I discovered how to trigger the enemies after the broken bridge to charge at the Marines in the bunker, which let me sneak around the backside of the area, mostly uncontested. All you had to do was hit the trigger volume near the silos. Kill them. But it looks like we're pretty safe. He's pretty far away, he's far away, facing the wrong direction and miles away from me. Time to go. And additionally, I uncovered a major deload near the end. By hitting a trigger by the barricades and doubling back, the entire previous area would deload, except for the 2 wraiths we needed for the final clear. It worked out perfectly. The storm had become second nature, and Floodgate was just Floodgates. But at this point, the route for the end of the level hadn't been fully implemented. I simply hadn't thought to include it. One person can't do everything. But arriving at the Ark, the furthest any LASO runner had ventured at the time, was a whole different story. It took me 6 full runs just to make it all the way through the Ark, The Ark's final chieftain was my nemesis. One small misstep, getting caught on an obstacle behind me, and it was game over. It was a humbling reminder that I hadn't practiced as thoroughly as I could have. I was aware of the safer strategy. I had known about Vincent K's approach to the Ark's final chieftain for years, but I hadn't fully embraced it. Looking back, I realised I was still cutting corners, relying on familiarity rather than committing to the best, safest methods. It showed me how important it is to let go of old habits and be willing to rethink everything to truly improve. Still, the foundation was laid, the basis of a route that could be refined and built upon. It was rough around the edges, but it existed. The starting point for what was to come. Next up was Thesis. Fresh off conquering Halo 2, he set his sights on Halo 3. I stepped into more of a guiding role for him.
I just pushed a box into me. God, I looked to raid your message and I got hit by the fuel rod AA rape, dude.
Helping him develop routes and strategies. By then, I was mostly stepped back from my own grind. I didn't have the hours anymore. But I wanted to see LASO done right. And after watching his Halo 2 performance, I had no doubt he could. He took what I had built and began to shape it further. Especially the latter half of the game, when my routing had been minimal. I hadn't made it that far often enough to develop solid strategies. So that became his territory. Being the first person to break through the Ark and reach the Covenant, I knew it was within his grasp. After about a month and a half, he did it. Thesis completed the first Halo 3 LASO run. I was just happy to see it finished.
Oh my fucking god. Holy shit, dude. Fuck this fucking game. Fuck the stupid panels. Fuck everything. I died at Cortana 7 motherfucking times, dude. This fucking dog shit. Oh
In
my
silence
fucking god, the panels.
for years. Nobody touched Halo 3 LASO. Not seriously anyway, until I finally moved, settled in, and got the spark back. I started grinding again. Not too seriously at first, just testing the waters. But soon, a few of us started really looking into the run again. Thesis, myself, Reflections, Siles, and others. The route was still really rough. It needed work, but we started digging. And we found things. I discovered a new ending for the Storm's warehouse section. By pushing past these enemies, it makes the brutes in the next section serve as reinforcements for the ones you just went past. Meaning, you can actually sneak behind them all, skipping everything. Reflections discovered a major skip in the Covenant Citadel. And a faster ending for Savo Highway. Slowly, the run began to evolve into something that finally looked achievable. Then it happened. Javelin, one of the biggest names in the Deathless community, dropped a $1,000 solo Halo 3 LASO challenge. It was the first open invitation Deathless contest the Halo 3 community had ever had, and with my history, I was right in the spotlight as one of the top contenders. First place takes all. I knew this was my moment, my chance to finally get a completion of my own. The bounty was for first place only, and the clock was ticking. We were given just 1 week to practice. That week, I went into overdrive. I wasn't just going to run the game, I was going to break it down, level by level, mastering every single section. My ultimate philosophy was pure consistency. There were plenty of faster, riskier strategies others used and attempted, but I was finally strict with myself. I was having none of that. I wanted to get through the game by the safest and surest means possible. No shortcuts, no unnecessary tricks. It was all about steady, reliable execution. Every time I died, I didn't just move on. I ran that section back 10 times over. I wanted to erase every mistake, make sure I never died there again. I ran through Cortana, 30 to 40 times from start to finish, just to see everything the level could have thrown at me. I wasn't just practicing, I was preparing for chaos. Cortana is infamous for its randomness. The floods spawn with inconsistent weapon loadouts, and every attempt plays out a little differently. I wanted to face it all. I needed to know how to approach almost every single situation that could happen. I loaded up Halo Checkpoint Manager. I froze enemy spawns. I studied placements, and looked for patterns I could exploit. I even tested which enemies I could block from attacking me. I took Cortana to the next level, analysed it, dissected it, and mastered it. I knew Cortana was a level that had to be approached with confidence. If it knew you were meek, or scared or timid, or if you played too passively, you were dead. It demanded aggression, decisiveness, and control. That was a mindset I built my preparation around. It was a nightmare of a level, but I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready. After that week of relentless preparation, I felt more confident than ever. I knew that any more practice wouldn't be efficient. I was at the point where a run was imminent, and I was as ready as I could possibly be. I did one final full game run to see how it all came together, and I died 4 times. When I went back, I drilled each of those 4 sections relentlessly, fixing every mistake. I wanted no loose ends. When the contest began, it started strong. 3 runners made it to the Ark on day 1, and I was one of them. Then, it started to fall apart. I died on the Ark. And honestly, it was hilarious. After making it through the Scarab Wall, something happened that I, and no one else apparently, had ever seen before. I only had 1 Scorpion tank spawn, instead of the usual 2 or 3. And that 1 tank, it immediately floored it, straight into enemy fire. I scrambled to get in and take control, but I didn't make it in time. Game over. It was a ridiculous way to lose a run that far in, but I wasn't going to let it happen again. The next time I reached that spot, I had a plasma pistol ready and waiting. The second that tank spawned in, I'd EMP it from driving off. I wasn't taking any chances after that. A quick reminder that even with all the preparation in the world, you can't expect the unexpected. But Thesis died on Cortana. It was almost over before it had really begun. The competition was fierce. Storix, one of the greatest Halo 3 runners of all time, was in the mix.
I didn't pick it up? What? Are you serious?
Fraser, who had already conquered Halo 2 LASO, was right there too. I knew from the start it wasn't just about beating the game. It was going to be a battle against some of the best players out there. Then came the gut punch. Thesis was disqualified. He was by far the favourite, having multiple Halo 3 LASO completions already under his belt. Honestly, I didn't think the contest would last long if he was in it. Losing him early was a shock to all of us. It was tough to see him go, but it also meant my chances of winning had just gotten better. The problem, I had full-time work. But I knew that if the contest lasted more than a week, I had 2 weeks of vacation already booked. I just needed it to hold out. With my irregular work hours, I could barely manage more than 1 attempt per day, the run taking a minimum of 4 hours. But I pushed anyway, and I made progress. I reached the Covenant twice, further than I'd ever made it before, past my old personal best of the Ark from years earlier. I knew I had it in me. Throughout the contest, other competitors came into my stream, and I helped where I could, offering advice, explaining how I approached certain sections. One of those runners was Bejesus. I showed him a few things and helped him refine his approach. But it wasn't looking good. 3 to 4 people reached Cortana before I did. I started to get worried that it would be over before I even had a chance to really grind this out. My work was getting in the way. Then, one morning, I woke up and it was over. Bejesus had finished the run. He had taken first place. I was crushed. I'd poured everything I had into those attempts. Late nights, relentless practice, problem solving under pressure, and to fall short, not in the middle of a run, but while I was asleep. It hit hard. Still, I couldn't be bitter. He earned it. And, in an incredibly generous move, Jesus gave $250 of the prize money to second place, as a thank you to the community. That gesture meant a lot, and I still wanted my completion. And on the first day of my 2-week vacation, it happened. I had a run that died on the storm. It stung, but instead of getting discouraged, I ran it back immediately. And that run? That was the one. After an extremely close call on the Covenant, I reached Cortana for the first time. Everything I'd practiced, every strategy, every repetition, every breakdown, was about to be put to the test. I'd studied every single spawn, every encounter, every possible route. I'd created videos analysing every part of the level. I knew Cortana inside and out. Now, just to paint the picture, no one had ever beaten Cortana on the first attempt. The odds were against me, but I was ready. Everything started off smoothly. Textbook execution, just like in practice. I cleared the first part of the reactor room without a hitch, but on the way back, I ran into 2 sword flood. Normally, this wouldn't faze me. I'd seen it before in practice. I knew exactly what I had to do. Until they did something I'd never seen before. In my practice runs, the sword flood were pretty chill and just walked towards me. This time they ran, full speed. For a moment, panic crept in, but I kept my cool, adapted on the fly, and managed to survive the encounter. The slight adrenaline rush pushed me through. It took a moment to compose myself, and carried on. And then, I became the first person to break through Cortana on the first try. And once Cortana is over, the run is essentially complete. The final level, Halo, is free. So when I loaded it up, I knew I was about to finish this. Dude. You have no idea how scary that reactor room was with those 2 sword flood. You have no idea how scary that was. Dude, oh my god, my heart. So in practice, like, they walk at you. Okay, I had that situation once before with the 2 sword flood in the reactor room, and they both walked me really slowly, calmly, and I shut them off the map. That time he ran at me full speed. I was like, "This is it. I'm dead. I'm over. It's over. I'm dead." And I lived. Dude, that was crazy. Not finished yet. Got to finish this level, but it's basically. Now, a few things went wrong on my Halo, but I didn't let them shake me. Normally, you kill Johnson twice. On the second kill, he drops a Spartan laser with infinite ammo. That's the safest strat. Use it to kill enemies from a distance with no real risk. It also makes the escape safer, since you can clear out threats on the return trip. But in my run, when I killed Johnson the second time, the laser fell off the map, so I had to do it a different way. Not ideal, but I wasn't worried. It just meant it would take longer. I waited patiently for the spy fight to end. Then I stepped inside, killed Spark, and began clearing my way towards the Warthog. This was it, the final stretch. The end was in sight. All I needed was the Warthog run to go smoothly, and it would be done. Second place would be mine. More importantly, I'd finally have my completion. Years of work, trial, heartbreak and persistence, all leading to this historic moment. You can skip over each roundabout, meaning no enemies spawn for the immediate next section. It also skips the roundabouts, which are full of enemies. It's both faster and safer. I opted not to do these. I wanted the Warthog run to feel intense. I knew I could do it. I'd grinded that level hundreds of times over the years. I knew every bump, every spawn, every hazard. I also knew it was possible to survive the whole thing without shields. I'd done it before. It was just terrifying. That was the point. I didn't want to skip over the tension. I wanted the viewer to feel it with me. A raw, controlled finale. One last white knuckle test. And I was ready for it. That didn't make it any less terrifying. Every time a collapsing panel smacked me, every burst of enemy fire, it was the longest 4 minutes of my life. Then, I turned the final corner, and there it was. The dawn in sight. I hadn't spoken a single word for those last 4 minutes, but as I hit the jump into the final cutscene, I finally exhaled. A quiet breath of relief. I had done it. I had beaten Halo 3, Legendary, all skulls on, deathless. Only the 4th person in the world to ever do it. And with that run, I took second place of the contest. My journey was complete. I had mastered Halo 3, from world record speedruns to the final, brutal LASO gauntlet. And now, I'm finally ready to move on. The journey wasn't just about beating the game, it was about persistence, and pushing through doubt, frustration, and the endless hours when progress felt impossible. It was about community, connecting with others who shared the same passion, learning from them, helping each other, and celebrating every small breakthrough together. Most of all, it was about proving to myself that no matter how long it takes, no matter how many times I fail, I can achieve what I set out to do. Halo 3 LASO was more than a challenge. It was a test of patience, creativity, and heart. And now, as I close this chapter, I carry those lessons with me, ready for whatever comes next. Because sometimes, the hardest runs don't reward you with points or ranks, they just show you who you are.